All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Modern Workplace Partner Community Call. This is our quarterly update call, which is actually going to be our last call for the fiscal year. Do you want to get some housekeeping things out of the way first? This call is being recorded, so if you have any issues being recorded, now would be a good time to drop. We will make the deck available at our Yammer community right after the call, as well as the call recording. We'll make that available in a day or two at our YouTube channel. So first things first, I wanted to put together the recent calls that we've gone through this quarter. We'll be using this format going forward in our presentation, so it'll be easier for you to access decks from previous calls as well as call recordings from previous calls. So you can see all the calls for productivity, for security, and for Windows and devices that we had during this quarter. And also want to provide you our upcoming schedule. So with this being the last call of the fiscal year and a lot of conferences coming up in July and August, this is actually, we're going to take the months of July and August off, and our next call will be held in September. If you have any ideas or feedback about topics that we should discuss going into next year, please feel free to email me at wimaul@microsoft.com. Also, the resources that will continually be available to you are Yammer community, the link to register for calls, as well as the link for call recordings, and our US blog. The US blog link will actually link to all of the partner communities that are available, so not just Modern Workplace, but also Data and AI, business apps, et cetera, et cetera. And lastly, if you do need information from those other solution areas, they also host a monthly call, and here's the schedule. Most likely this will continue into fiscal year 19, but Business Apps is held every second Tuesday, Apps and Infrastructure is every third Friday, Data and AI is every first Friday, and then Open Source Solutions, they host a call every fourth Friday. And here are the links to register for those calls. Last thing, I want to make one last plug for Microsoft Inspire. It's coming up in Las Vegas from July 15th to the 19th. Wanted to call it out because we've extended the current price of $2,295 for an all-access pass through June 14th. So register now, because after that date on June 15th, the price will go up by $300. So definitely want to make sure everybody is able to attend and enjoy Inspire. This will actually be the first year where Inspire, which is our partner event, will be held or overlap with our Microsoft internal event, which is Microsoft Ready. So Inspire will end on a Wednesday and Ready will start on a Wednesday. So we'll both be able to be together and hear the keynote from Satya, as well as enjoy the entertainment and networking that's going to be held Wednesday evening at the Las Vegas Speedway. So if you haven't had a chance yet to register, please do so before the 15th when the price will increase by $300. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and kick things off and start with our updates for Modern Workplace productivity.
Hey, thanks, Willie, and thanks everybody for joining us on this Friday. And just 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas, we hosted the SharePoint Conference North America, and there were a number of exciting announcements that happened, which I think was probably the most eventful news of the quarter. So I wanted to take you through those and also bring you up to date on some other important highlights from the all-up productivity. So on our first slide, let me take you through some of the teams, the intranets, and the modern pages. And so one of the things we're doing is that we're bringing that full power of the SharePoint document library experience to Microsoft Teams. You can see the graphic there in the bottom right corner. And so you can see that you've got files with previews. You can pin items, metadata, and flow. So everything that you're experiencing today within SharePoint is going to be available in Teams. So you can even create columns. Anything you can do in SharePoint, you'll be able to do in that Teams experience. So that's nice. We've got a one-click to connect a SharePoint team site to a team. So if you have a group-connected SharePoint team site that isn't connected currently to a team, then it's just one click. You're going to see that show up in the bottom left-hand corner, where you could just be able to add a team to your existing sites if they don't currently exist. And so it's going to be easy to tell now which folders in your library have associated teams and a channel and chat associated to it right from within the SharePoint interface. So this is going to be from the library view. So let's say you've got some folders that are associated with teams and some that are not. You're going to be able to see that visually. So I haven't seen that shown up in my tenant yet, but that's something that's coming. You can now more easily pick news articles and lists when you're adding a SharePoint tab to a Teams channel. So when you add that tab in Teams, you're going to be able to tab between available lists, pages, and even individual news items to quickly bring them into Teams. So I have a note there about using SharePoint Framework Web Parts as a tab. So obviously they're doing that with some of these current new features, but you'll be able to do that. We're going to try to target that for the Ignite timeframe. That was actually a build announcement, so you're not going to see that in that link I provided in the bottom left. But if you join those SharePoint Framework community calls that Vesa Unit does, you can hear more about that. On the intranet side, we've got some updates on news and page announcements and an organizational news. So we have hub sites, and we've had some web part updates to that to the organizational news. So what you can do is some additional capabilities where you can select which sources that you want to pull content from. So news web parts, you can filter news from a variety of source sites. You can filter them based upon the content you want to show. There's a layout picker now. You can see that on the graphic on the next slide. Don't go there yet, Willie. I'm just saying that's where the graphic is. And you can just pick that layout that's most conducive to your overall site vision. So that unique hub layout, news web part is going to provide additional capabilities, like you can pin news articles, and again, you're also going to have some carousel support. And this is important for content curators. It may not be as flexible as you want immediately, but you can see the direction that we're going, where you can deem specific sites as organizational news sources, and you'll be able to get some special visual treatment that's going to bubble up to the top of one's view. When you associate a site to a hub site, we've now added approvals for those. So admins can have control over whether someone can add, if they're approved to add a hub site association, there's going to be an approval process for that now. That's all done within PowerShell. And site script on site hub association. So if you're familiar with site designs and site scripts today, what you can do now is invoke a script on a hub site association. That wasn't previously possible. So that's a nice added feature. New to modern pages up there in the upper right, audience targeting. So those of you who've been around for SharePoint a while, you're going to remember this feature. Well, now it works on SharePoint Online and also with modern pages. So you can better define, what news articles and pages appear on the home experience of your site by configuring that to what's visible for specific groups. So maybe you want to target by geography, or maybe it's department, and each person will have a unique experience that complies with what you want them to see without having to create, specific audience sites. So That's going to be enabled right now for news and pages and other web parts. And also page approval. So when you have a news post, and remember, you used to be able to do this out of the box. Well, you can do this now with out-of-the-box flow integration. So, of course, you can continue to customize that, your workflow, to meet the needs of your specific approval process, but now it's just built in. So that's a nice capability. There's also some content organizations, also known as page metadata and content filtering. So you can organize your libraries and just kind of influence how they're viewed based upon specific metadata criteria and apply that to the page itself. So you can choose region or role, what type of page or page status, and then present those views and make it possible for to see it or not see the page based upon how they meet that criteria. All right, moving along to some announcements on the ECM and the SharePoint Server 2019 on the next slide. So SharePoint Server 2019 will be coming out, starting with that first. So we've got improvements to document libraries and navigation constructs, basically making it consistent with Office 365, which is really the baseline of that. We're going to do a cutover from that code base. The investments include communications sites, team sites, modern team sites. That's all coming to 2019. And we're also going to include the next-gen sync client. We're going to have some improved hybrid support and for scenarios. And you'll have new developer options, particularly with the SharePoint framework, and some improved support with Power Apps and Flow for your business processes. So the timeline on that is going to be generally available to customers in H2, and preview is going to be available later this summer. So ECM, also known as Content Services, there's really quite a few updates here, so I would encourage you to check that link out for all the details and be able to get the screenshots, but just a couple of highlights. Flow for cognitive analysis. So what you can do is we're adding intelligence to a lot of these scenarios. So you can process any text for sentiment, key phrases, translation, or moderation. This is all available now. So think about, you've got a document library with lists, and think about sentiment analysis, say, on a list of tweets. We have AI for images, so you can teach the cloud to recognize new objects for auto tagging. So like receipts or people, whiteboards, business cards. We identify the geolocation data and anything else that's extractable from, particularly the text in the images, and those tags will get put into metadata columns on the document library. So imagine scenarios like you're triggering a flow based upon a tag or a geolocation. So partners can think of some powerful things there. Got some updates to row formatting, so you can create special formatting for any list or library with scripting. So this is like the column formatter we released last year, but now you can use those scripts to define conditional formats to be applied to entire row. So this is helpful. Maybe you want to take over the full screen in a responsive design. This is going to be great to help provide a complete app solution when viewing content. So just a couple other lists and improvements, new ways to create lists. So if you're ever wondering, hey, whatever happened to that feature where I used to be able to create a list from an Excel document? Well, that's back, right? So there's a lot of back to the future. We're really just kind of making these available for SharePoint Online and modern lists. And so you can do that with templates as well, based upon templates. Real-time list update, so without having to do a refresh, you can see updates immediately on lists and libraries. And maybe you used to be able to create workflows with Visio. You remember doing that back and it integrated with SharePoint Designer. Well, now we have Visio workflows working with Flow, or we will, supposed to be available at the end of July. So if that's a feature that's interesting to you, to look for that. And then moving on to the next slide, there were some good updates as well for OneDrive for Business. There's a new scan experience. So what we did is we built in that scan functionality right into the to that tray, that icon tab bar that you have in the bottom, and we also improved the capture experience where you can add multiple pages or annotate and change the file name right in that capture experience. And then camera upload support in OneDrive for Business. This was the #1 requested feature far and away in our user voice community. So we're excited to announce that automatic uploads for photos and videos captured on your camera roll on iOS and Android. And if you're like, well, I've been doing this for a while, what's the big deal? So the key here is that this is going to work for your OneDrive for Business in addition to personal OneDrive as well. So password protective links. We're adding the ability to set and require a password when you share a file or folder with other people, so you can prevent others from accessing your files if your intended recipient accidentally forwards or shares a link. Of course, password protected links are a nice capability, but if you're already using the secure external sharing, you already have that already, so this will just fit for certain scenarios, but it's a nice to have. I like this one, so block download. And so we're adding the ability to prevent users from downloading files via view-only links. So this enables you to share an Office document in the cloud while preventing people from keeping offline copies. On that graphic on the bottom right, this is the known folder move. So this is going to allow admins to be able to move known folders from their PC, so like documents, desktops, and pictures automatically to OneDrive. And then we have a capability called Team Site Auto Mount. And so this feature offers administrators the ability to automatically connect and synchronize specific SharePoint team sites as part of a OneDrive deployment or an upgrade process. And then finally, transfer ownership for deleted users. So today when a user leaves an organization, the ownership of the OneDrive is transferred to his or her manager. You know that if you've been in that administrator interface, you can go in and take control over those files yourself as an admin. Well, now you're going to have the ability to transfer it to anybody in the organization, not just their manager. Okay, on the next slide, a couple of security updates and updates for Microsoft Stream were also included in the conference. Multi-geo with SharePoint is available now in selective preview. It's going to be available later this summer. It supports global data residency needs, and this is not a performance thing, but for data residency requirements by storing each user's Office 365 data in desired geography. Let's see. So the GDPR dashboard in Office 365. So this really helps you reduce risks and archiving compliance to keep you compliant with GDPR. There's some great support in Office 365 in general on the discovery and managing and protecting, but we added some interesting pieces around being able to support that, to help you keep your required documentation and actually a process for managing those data service requests and breach notifications. So I had a community call on that last month, and if you missed it and you're interested in all those details from the GDPR dashboard, go check out the link in right underneath that bullet there in GDPR dashboard. And then for the all-up announcements, you can see the community, tech community link below that. So in Streams is going to power the new Teams cloud recordings. So that's going to bring that same automatic speech-to-text transcription functionality used in video on demand to all of your recorded meetings. So the transcription and the time coding for the meetings, recording attendees, That means they can search for specific moments in the conversation that matters most to them. I've been enjoying this in our preview. It really works fantastic. It's a terrific capability. You're going to like it a lot if you haven't experienced that yet. And then with Stream, you're also able to publish directly from within PowerPoint. So there's a recording tab that shows up in PowerPoint where you could add animations and screen recordings and transitions and then publish that video directly to Stream with a couple of clicks. All right, on the next slide, Jeff Teeper in the keynote made a big splash with the announcement of SharePoint Spaces. So if you missed this, what it is, it's an immersive mixed reality experience which enables you to view and interact with content from every angle, right, in a three-dimensional view. You got those models on SharePoint, and visualize and manipulate data, product models in real time. So basically, SharePoint is mainstreaming mixed reality, empowering everybody to create visually compelling spaces that are going to be available to anyone. And they made a point to say on any device, so you don't just need a HoloLens. It'll work with other lenses as well. And so you can get started with something called a smart template to create a mixed reality environment where you can kind of include surroundings and ambient sounds and textures and lighting, and then you add your content, which can include files that you already have in SharePoint, and allowing you to repurpose your existing data or any documents or images that you have. So the vision is to be able to make this integrated and extensible, and you can augment a space with content across from across Microsoft 365 and other data sources and services. And you can customize that space to reflect your customer's brand. So you can build new capabilities with the SharePoint framework. And we expect that the partners are going to embrace the spaces and be able to develop web parts and experiences that are going to drive a new wave of innovation for your customers. So we're going to make this available eventually in all commercial plans. And so that is going to be helpful if you're trying to think about what kind of experiences that you would build that they'd be able to include the first line worker. All right, so that's the SharePoint update. And then finally, with just a couple of other updates I wanted to highlight. So if you're looking for an update on all that's been happening and new with Microsoft Teams, I encourage you to get this deck and to check out this mechanics video. It was a great one, and really kind of will get you up to date on the latest. The Office 365 developer program has been around for a while, but it's been updated. So you can get your free Office 365 tenant for a year, and check out the FAQ to see exactly which licenses this includes. Direct routing. We announced on May 15th that this is now in public preview, and it's a capability of Microsoft phone system in Office 365 to help your customers connect their SIM trucks to Microsoft Teams. So this is a nice step forward for Teams, bringing enterprise voice capabilities. Storage was another big announcement of the quarter if you missed that. So we had a 20 times increase in the SharePoint Online per user license storage allocation. So this is going to increase to 1 terabyte plus 10 gigabytes per user license purchased, up from 1 terabyte plus 0.5 or half a gigabyte per user license. So and also a tax simulator was launched. In mid-April, we announced tax simulator, now generally available for either E5 customers or if you have a threat intelligence standalone license. So with tax simulator, customers can launch simulated attacks on their end users to determine how they would behave in the event of an actual attack. So the GA updated a nice well, it's okay. But it included an HTML editor that allows you to basically craft your own emails. It comes with 2 sample spear phishing templates. And so if you want to see a demo of that and check that out, that's also in that same link. I had Stu Clark on there along with that GDPR dashboard update, and so that's in that same community call. All right, that's it for me, Willie.
All right, thanks, Michael. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
We did have some questions, a couple questions.
Yeah, I'll get to those in the moderator window. Okay.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks. All right, we'll move things along to our security quarterly updates and bring on Edward Walton.
Thank you, Willie. Great information, Michael. A lot of stuff that even I didn't know about. Really cool stuff inside Teams.
Yeah, it's always a challenge, right, to try to summarize a quarter, right? But we get through it.
It really is. I'll touch base with you on some questions that I have later. So hello, everyone. My name is Edward Walton. I'm part of the Modern Workplace team, along with my peers Willie and Michael, as well as John Wojan, who's on my team. I am part of the Security and Compliance division, and today we're going to talk about the specific workloads that make up the Security and Compliance portion of the One Commercial Partner and Modern Workplace. Lots and lots of updates. It seems like Microsoft is spending a tremendous amount of money, effort, mind share, and making them a very serious security player out there in the cybersecurity arena. And so not a whole lot of visuals as Michael's deck is, because there's so much, but we're going to talk on the workloads that we're responsible for as a group. So we're going to start off with Windows Defender, and I will highlight maybe one or two items for each of the workloads so we stay within time. One second. So, what's new in the world of Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection? Well, there are some great things that got announced recently, and one of the biggest things is now Windows has a Office 365 equivalent metric, which is Windows Secure Score. So with Windows Secure Score, you get to look at the machines that you've onboarded into your Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection or Windows Security Portal to give you a summarization based on best practices on what your relative secure score is. That is looking at whether you have endpoint protection, your OS versions, unauthorized or deviation from a policy that you have, right? And then you have the ability to pivot on that data using Power BI and integration, Power BI Cloud or Power BI on the desktop if you want to do some hands or out-of-band type of work. One of the bigger things also is that you're starting to see Azure Active Directory being the focal point and the pivot about applying and doing conditional access. So you'll see a common thread around conditional access is Azure AD is one of the linchpins and is being used for all the other workloads for conditional access. And when you're having conditional access, it allows you to be able to now apply policies against groups, as well as now starting to use some of those role-based access controls that you may or may not require within your organization. So within Windows Defender ATP, these are some of the hot things that are out there right now. Windows Secure Score is for those who are familiar with Office 365 Secure Score, it is similar. Conditional access, role-based access. Another thing that's really, really evolving also is the advanced hunting. This is the ability for Microsoft to get out there and rather than be reactive to zero-day threats, it's able to look at and go out and try to see whether legacy exploits are still propagating in the wild, looking at modified and morphed attacks, blending of attacks. So being able to go out and do some advanced hunting across infrastructures on the backside to see what attacks are working, all right? So those are the highlights for Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, right, which is part of the M365 E5 subscription model. So we'll go ahead and go to InTune. So within InTune, which is Microsoft's MDM and MAM workload, which is mobile device management as well as mobile application management, you'll notice inside Azure, both of these workloads are controlled through your Azure portal, and you'll see that the conditional access is highlighted here. You will also notice that instead of calling the application MAM now, you'll see app protection, right? So that's just a change in the nomenclature of what MAM is. And so now we're starting to look at some of the improvements that are coming down in Q4. Some of the highlights now, if you're looking at managed browser, you're starting to see support for Edge on iOS and Android. I know that seems a little odd that Edge has been out a while. This is our product, but we're finally being able to have managed browser for that, right? And parity with the managed browser. So Edge will have the same capabilities with some of the other supported browsers, right? And you'll make sure that you have that. You're able to restrict corporate accounts and Office core apps. So the native integration that makes us such a great platform is now being able to extend this out to native apps that are part of the mobile things. Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, Excel, being able to restrict corporate accounts to those, right? Making sure that no one can download their own version. It has been there, but now it's more refined. If you go down to company portal, one of the biggest things is from Ask is making sure that the company portal is more user friendly. So when you're onboarding or you're having self-service and you're bringing on new devices, new identities, new users, being able to make that experience almost as seamless as possible. You're now starting to see something that had been requested a while, which is line of business support for company portal for the Mac OS, which is very different from iOS, right? Mac OS, desktop, iOS, mobile device, right? You're looking at network conditional access. So being able to control access physically on your wiring plant and protocol stack. This is currently NGA for Q2 and moving along. Right now, the main vendor is Extreme Networks as a switching vendor, being able to use that network control access in conjunction with InTune and conditional access. Now you're looking at device conditional access, and we're combining with partners to Property and Pareto. And you'll also see support for Google Play Protect. So Google is taking, a little bit more serious about what they're putting in their store and being able to validate and protect those applications that users may or may not have are publishing, and make sure that they're not housing any type of workloads, payloads, Trojans, or any backdoors, right? Going on to the next. We're going to talk a little bit about Active Directory. So, Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is the new pivot and the new list point and the new perimeter, right? So you're saying everything is around managing the access, the data, and the identities. If you can take the identities, you're seeing why this is so important. Forgive me for the formatting, trying to get all this stuff crammed into one. So some of the highlights around Azure AD is looking at the core identity access and management. You'll now see that inside H1, FY19 H1, Office 365 groups are going to be maintained, and now they're going to have naming policies. So you're going to be able to control and restrict some of the really, really over-the-top naming, saying that if someone's going to create a group, you can set policies up to say that all HR groups within Office 365 have to start with HR dash or something that can really identify them, so that when you're administrating and managing these particular groups, you don't really have to rely on someone taking the time to put the accurate description inside of the group, right? They have to confer to that. Another thing is trying to make sure that parity within US Gov and Azure AD for government is coming around. So now you're going to start seeing a closer and a smaller window for feature parity between what is commercial and what is inside Microsoft Azure Government Cloud. And so now in Q4 of this, you're going to see that these feature sets are going to now start coming to the Azure Gov side quicker. If we look below that, we look at external identities. One of the biggest pain points with Azure AD, especially if you're doing B2B or B2C, is that how do you give external users access to your teams, your groups, some of your SharePoint sites? You're starting to see Azure AD do some of these things by taking advantage of things like using JavaScript to customize pages, allowing simple passwords or pins for your Azure AD B2C tenant, and being able to do more with APIs when you're creating token expiration and things along that line. The top level one is probably the one that was most requested. The ability to allow or block invitations to B2B users from specific organizations, meaning that while you may do a B2B or a trusted situation to a particular partner or customer, you may want to restrict someone from that, right? We jumped ahead. And so now you can prevent unique individuals within an organization, so it's not everything. Right? You can say, I'm going to trust this organization, but I'm actually going to restrict it down to or only allow this particular group within that organization to have a B2B interaction with my company. Last but not least, on the hybrid identities, we're still using AD Connect. People still have on-premise AD, and they're still using have to have the ability to do synchronization. Now, Azure AD Connect, healthy, risky IP reports. So if someone is trying to establish a hybrid identity and it looks at an IP address as one side of the AD Connect, it can say, wow, that's a risky ID to want to do any type of directory synchronization. Are you sure, or can I restrict that, right? I think this is probably going to be in response of maybe some type of exploitation or someone inadvertently standing up a directory sync from a location that's deemed unsafe, probably in another security workload such as Cloud App Security, Office 365, or AIP, or any of these things that now we're starting to normalize and converge all our risky IP address mindshare or database. So there are going to be if you have a risky IP for one workload, it's probably going to coincide with a risky IP that's been identified in one of your other security workloads. Next. So let's move on to the next workload that we have. We've already, I'm sorry, still Azure AD Active Directory Protection and Security. Azure AD Privilege Identity Role Access Controls. So PIM is Privilege Identity Management. One of the biggest things that you'll see inside Azure Security Center, or if you do a security modeling, it'll say you have too many global administrators. But that's not necessarily true. If your organization has a functional model where you need to have 10, 15, or 20 GAs inside Azure, that's just the model. How do you protect those? So privileged identity management is really just-in-time admin access, just like just-in-time networking for Azure IaaS workloads. But now you're able to do role-based control access. Once again, pivoting on the power of protecting, identifying, and restricting the identity, right? You're going to have conditional access in terms of use. Being able to look at someone, publish the terms of use of being able to elevate or do work at a privileged access mode. And if they violate that by a series of policies or the activities, being able to rescind that inside PIM, right? Privileged identity management. And you're also starting to see conditional access across support for all protocols that are coming across for transmission of data and line of business apps, as well as more integration with Microsoft Cloud App Security, which is our CASB solution, which helps us monitor, control, and mitigate shadow IT. So you're starting to see not a true single pane of glass, but you're starting to see that identity is what we're going to focus on, or have been focusing on, and make more important to protect your infrastructure. And on the bottom, we're going to have one that I like is what if. Conditional access is powerful. If you put policies in place, which I've done in my demos, you can inadvertently lock yourself out. I love the what if feature, saying that if I build this policy, what are the repercussions of me doing this, right? What is the impact? So the what if allows you to go in, build out a series of policies, pivot against your hypothetical group that you want to put these controls on, and see what the actual results of those would be without inadvertently causing a disruption in your business or your customer's business, or locking yourself out. So it's similar if you're writing a PowerShell script that if you're in, you put the attribute what if just to see what would happen, right? So it seems minor, really, really big. What if? Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about, and excuse me for the formatting, I pulled up the highlights and it sort of took the title out. So we're going to talk about Microsoft Azure Advanced Threat Protection, which is our identity protection and monitoring for privileged identities that are inside our cloud workloads. So what we're doing now is a new Azure service. For those who are not familiar with Azure Advanced Threat Protection, it is our version of Advanced Threat Analytics, except for it's cloud-based. So it's a new Azure service, relatively speaking. There is no ATA center required. So you're able to now deploy this workload to watch your privileged identities and their behaviors inside your Azure subscriptions. You can manually tagging of sensitive entities, right? So if you have GAs or security attendants or some of these privileged identities, you can go in and manually tag them rather than have the system monitor and then come in and do automatic tagging or notifying you. So you can come in, look at a particular activity and manually tag that and put in nomenclature and description around that. The biggest announcement is multi-forest support. Those that are familiar with advanced threat analytics as well as this know that it was forest centric. you could only deploy and monitor in a single forest. You will now see multi-forest support, meaning you could deploy this to multiple Azure subscriptions and have a single pane of glass for where the workload detections and alerts are coming to. That's very big for those who have any type of managed service offering. They want to try to introduce this into it. The ability to investigate lateral movement, the graph is improved. If you see an attack or kill chain, the ability to go back and look at forensics and create a lateral movement footprint or some type of investigation is a big. They're improving that graph to be able to have a timeline of when you suspect a positive attempt at compromise or a post-breach activity investigation. The lateral movement graph is really, really improved. In the detect, VPN detections. You're having more VPNs are not dead. People are still using them. Organizations rely heavily on them. One of the biggest things was not being able to detect whether the connection to a physical or networking was by virtue of VPN, some type of remote access, and things along that line. Azure ATP can now detect whether that connection and that activity or their workloads are being conducted via VPN, which is really good. And some of the other things that are planned are LDAP reconnaissance, seeing people that are trying to open up bind or any type of LDAP or any type of directory or schema remuneration. That's going to be part of the plan in FY19H2. All right. Next slide, please. So let's talk about advanced threat analytics. Once again, I apologize for the superimposed. Advanced threat analytics is our on-premise version of our identity management. It is still supported. It is in version 1.9. 2.0 should be released shortly. You'll see that they're trying to maintain parity. You'll see that the lateral movement graph is going to be uniform across what they're doing inside Azure as well as on-premise. And then one of the biggest things at the bottom is the detect. Because a lot of service accounts are accounts that are used to run sensitive operations, emulate users, exploits are now creating accounts that mimic the naming conventions of service accounts to avoid detection. One of the biggest things now is looking at detection for suspicious service creation, meaning that someone creates an account and spins up a service that's running in an escalated or privileged mode to say, is this a valid function? Is this user valid for what it's doing? Why is it looking like a service account but having activity as though it is a live person? So that's going to be something that's going to be on the road and they're going to be introduced into advanced threat analytics as support continues for the product. Next slide, please. So let's look at Azure Information Protection. For those who are not familiar with Azure Information Protection, it is Microsoft's security workload solution for data governance and data protection, data monitoring, tracking, meaning I'm able to control access via policy to individuals and what they can do with documents within your line of business. There are numerous updates. There have been updates almost, if not every 2 weeks, at least monthly about what the AIP and the information protection roadmap is looking like. You'll notice that the labeling is a big part, very in the middle. The ability to do labeling of the native Office apps, and that labeling is going to be persistent across 365, OneDrive, Cloud App Security. So if you go into one of the other workloads and apply labeling for your organization, whether it be HR, internal finance, sensitive, top secret, things along that line, you'll find that that labeling is going to be consistent across your other workloads and your other things. So you don't have to create separate labeling or separate policies to be able to make sure that it's consistent across. That's very big. Not a single pane of glass, but convergence on administrative and management workloads, right? And then also extending out the automatic labeling across those workloads using Azure Information Protection and Microsoft Cloud App Security. And also automatic labeling protection of on-premise data with the Azure Information Protection Scanner, right? So AIP Scanner allows you to scan for sensitive information by regulatory requirement or PII, and now being able to put that automatic labeling on-premise and use the scanner to validate that. That is very big, and one of the big announcements around labeling sensitive content. The Information Protection Reporting Dashboard is going to get better. Everything's around data, big data, and BI. Expect huge reporting improvements, being able to understand the repercussions and be able to come back and have very useful auditing and reporting for your regulatory internal or external controls. Next slide, please. So let's talk about Cloud App Security. Cloud App Security is Microsoft's CASB solution. It allows us to be able to monitor SaaS, mobile, and traditional applications that are egressing and egressing out of your physical infrastructure. It's deeply tied to your O365 subscription as well as your Azure tenant, being able to understand information and how these applications are being used in your infrastructure. If you look to the right, you'll see that you see two designations with either OCAS or CAD. The OCAA stands for Office Cloud App Security, which is a version that comes with Office 365 E5 subscription, and the Cloud App Discovery is the EMS E3 version. I hate to use the word light. These are just the limited functionality versions of a full-blown Cloud App Security deployment, which comes with the E5 subscription of EMS and or Microsoft 365 E5. So you're starting to see conditional access at the top again. That is becoming, like I said before, I can't overemphasize. If I put a series of conditions for identity, login, usage, and tracking, are they persistent across my workloads? Yes, by virtue of using Azure AD, you can now do this and say, if I do something for conditional access in Cloud App Security, it will resonate to the other workloads. You're starting to see Cloud App Security for on-premise applications using Azure AD Proxy. Proxy is not a device. It's nothing more than a series of policies and controls based on the user identity to be able to proxy their session and what they're doing within your tenant and or subscription. Unfortunately, they're only available in the full-blown version of Cloud App Security. They're not available in Office Cloud App Security or Cloud App Security-D, once again, which is EMS E3. You have to have EMS E5 or Microsoft 365 E5 for these. At the bottom, block download them and take files on download. Real-time file labeling and protection, and to be able to block those before they enter or exit your infrastructure. That is very big as far as working with Azure Information Protection. So combining Cloud App Security and combining Azure Information Protection gives you a very powerful solution for data protection, data governance, and shadow IT discovery and remediation. Okay, next slide, please. Around threat protection for Microsoft Cloud App Security. Ransomware detection enhancement. It is already GA. Because this product can see applications, SaaS, traditional, and things that are transversing your own premise as well as what you have tied to your subscription, can be a powerful tool for detecting ransomware because it can detect the extensions of known ransomware attacks. That is supported in Office Cloud App Security, right? So because most of the ransomware is being transmitted via email. So it makes sense to be able to have the ransomware detection enhancement now that you can see it in Cloud App Security as well as Office 365 Cloud App Security. That's a very big thing as far as being able to remediate and have a single entity sacrifice to stop ransomware. Whereas one device or one entity or one ID may have it, but because it sensed that, it now inoculates and allows you to have activity and actionable insights to protect the rest of your infrastructure. Okay. At the very bottom, because most, not most, but a lot of people have multiple cloud solution scenarios. They're using Azure, they're using AWS, they're using Google. You'll notice that now we have AWS suspicious activity. So if it sees activity between multi-cloud deployments, it can now say that something suspicious is happening on the AWS side by virtue of site-to-site, VPN, or tie-ins with any applications that you may have. This is a huge announcement, so it shows that we're working better with other competitors and other people in the market because we can't operate on an island to assume that no one that customers and clients are only using Azure, and that other cloud provider won't be a source of a potential breach or infection within your organization. That's very big. It's in public preview right now. AWS suspicious activity. That's very big. Be able to detect that before it enters your Azure environment. Next slide, please. Shadow IT discovery. you'll see that the core functionality of what Microsoft Cloud App Security has most of the check boxes for the other two workloads, the OCAS and the CASD, right? The big thing, we're a week and a half, 2 weeks into it now, GDPR risk assessment. The Shadow IT now takes advantage of the intelligence that we have around our products to help you with your GDPR risk assessment, remediation, and information gathering, right? And so there are features, policies, and light-ups that you can turn on to say, I am being or could be possibly affected by GDPR controls. Turn these on to help me monitor SaaS applications that could put me in violation or I may not know about, so that I can go in and either put controls in or either put those for marked exclusion. It is part of the Cloud App Security. It is also part of Office Cloud App Security and Cloud App Security-D. Once again, is the E3 version of EMS. That's very big with GDPR. One of the other things that doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it really is, a lot of the reports could be very technical, overkill. Now you have C-level discovery, right? Being able to do this and be able to provide a meaningful report to the C-suite. To the auditors, to those who don't need some of the deep down technical information, but they need a compliance, regulatory progress, and auditing reporting. So that's a real big add-on right there to make sure that the consumable reporting is something that can be used, right? Once again, on the bottom for compliance, platform, and integration, everybody's getting to the conditional access, the RBAC, and at the very bottom, FedRAMP. That is becoming convergence. Right, then making sure that you have feature parity on what commercial individuals can do as well as what our government brethren can do also. So you're starting to see those ramp ups to make sure that when we're deploying something, everyone can use it. Next slide, please. And that is what I have for the security and compliance for M365. We've covered Windows Defender ATP. We've talked about EMS. We talked about Azure AD. Lots and lots of good things out there, lots of opportunity to protect your environment and stay in front of the cybersecurity landscape. And with that, Willie, I'll hand it over to you, sir.
All right, thanks, Edward. Appreciate those updates. A lot coming from both productivity and security. Not so much coming from Windows and devices, but I am going to touch on a few updates that were announced this previous quarter. Before I do that, I'll try to do it right quickly so that we end right at the top of the hour. But one question came in, Edward, and that's, does the M365 E1 contain the full EMS E3 functionality, or are there limitations when you get Microsoft 365?
So ask that question one more time.
Will M365 contain the full EMS E3?
It's according to what version, right? So if you are getting the M365 E3 version, you're essentially going to get the EMS E3 version. If you get the M365 E5, you get the EMS E5.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so again, I'll try to get through the Windows updates pretty quickly so we can, in here at the top of the hour, there's just 4 that I have, and Edward already covered Windows Defender ATP, so I'll just discuss 3 right quick. The Windows 10 April update was released right at the end of April, so April 30th, but it was actually available through Updater on May 1st. So a lot of people have probably seen that. Actually, we've seen 50% of the PCs already upgraded within the first month, so great traction there. Some of the features that are available with the update are timelines, so you can see recently used documents through the taskbar, nearby share, so now you can send files to peers that are nearby, maybe in an office meeting using Bluetooth. You also have Focus Assist. I know everybody gets distracted with so many notifications, pop-up windows, and things like that. So you could set up Focus Assist to work in an environment where maybe those pop-ups don't come up for you, or maybe just urgent ones or high priority ones pop up for you. And one that's I've been testing out is dictation. So within Windows applications, you're able to use dictation to speak and speak emails that will end up getting typed out and sent for you. For Windows 10 IoT, we had a With the April update, we made enhancements to AI and machine learning. So what this does is move AI closer to the edge while still giving you the power of the cloud. You can leverage machine learning and AI in the actual device using the Windows AI platform. So with that, you're going to create more intelligent devices. But at the same time, we made it easier to integrate with Azure for additional capabilities and management of those intelligent edge devices. So it's really providing a true integrated edge plus cloud IoT solution. We actually had a call last month around Windows 10 IoT, and some of the solutions that customers are enabling with Windows IoT were discussed during that call. So it's great to actually hear those examples, and if you have a chance, definitely go back and listen to that recording for the Windows 10 IoT call. And last but not least, Surface Hub 2. If you can see the pictures here, it's basically two cool features that are going to be provided with the Surface Hub 2. One is toweling, so you could towel up to 4 Surface Hub 2 devices to make either one screen or 4 separate screens with multiple applications. So you can see how more productive you can be by having video conference up on one screen, maybe a spreadsheet up on another, PowerPoint on another, Power BI somewhere. But basically, you'll be able to use the Surface Hub 2 just as you would use multiple monitors. The other thing that's really cool with Surface Hub 2 is that they're implementing multi-user sign-in. So multiple people will be able to sign into a Surface Hub 2 workspace. So the benefit there is that if Edward, myself, and Michael were in a meeting, we can all sign in and collaborate with our documents our personal documents that we have available to us. So we could bring those into the meeting by getting authenticated through multi-user sign-in. So Surface Hub 2, it was announced, but it is still new. So we're just testing it in 2018 with select customers. It won't be available for purchase until sometime in 2019. And you can see in that top graphic, we actually partnered with a company called Steelcase to create a rolling stand, so you can make the Surface Hub 2 more mobile. It's not like you have to have one in every single conference room. You'll be able to move it around in certain scenarios and situations. All right, I tried to beat the top of the hour, but I missed it by a minute, but wanted to get all those updates in and allow time for Q&A. Couple last points. Don't forget to register for Inspire before the price increase on June 15th. And this will be the last call for Modern Workplace for the fiscal year. And we'll see you again with new content in September. All right. Thanks again for joining. And I'll stay on for a couple more minutes if there's any questions that do come in. Regarding the limit to the number of sign-ins, I do not know that. I'll have to look that up and see if there is a limit there. All right, it looks like there aren't any other questions coming in, so I'll go ahead and end the stream. Thanks again for joining the June quarterly update call, and we'll see you in September. Enjoy Inspire. Thank you.